Today, we will preview the NASCAR Cup Series at New Hampshire International Speedway. Who's the favorite entering the weekend? Formula One's at Silverstone. What's going to happen with Sergio Perez out? And Formula E Fest is next week. We'll cover all that and more right here on Grid Live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Grid Live pre-race show. Special shout out to everyone listening on the Ultimate Sports Radio Network, USRN Radio. I'm Kobe Lambert from the PodiumFinish.net, and with me is Joe Samniego. And we only have two races that are part of a series in the grid ranking, but this is really the start of something big.
Definitely the start of something big. It's going to be exciting race weekend, but then afterwards, we're bracing up, getting ready for a spectacular Formula E Fest. Starting Wednesday, 9 days, 6 races, 3 different courses, and at the end, when it's all said and done, we're going to have one champion. Now, we're not doing this alone. We're going to have some special programs starting off on Tuesday, and we're going to have some special guests with us coming all the way from Formula E Zone. They're going to be part of the programming with us. And we're very excited to welcome to the program from Formula E Zone, Jack. Jack, good morning, or in your case, good evening. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure.
We're super excited to have you on the program. I know it's going to be we're going to be really excited for next week. Everything's going to be super exciting for folks, especially next week. We got this really unique opportunity where we're going to have so many races in such a short period of time. How exciting is it to see something like this? Especially, this has never been done before in motorsports.
No, it is very exciting, but at the same time, as exciting as it is, it's over very quickly. So as soon as it's over, come the 14th of August, then that's it. There's no more racing in Formula E till January. So then we've got to somehow get through from the middle of August to the end of January, twiddling our thumbs, waiting for the next season. But no, it's a really good event. Fingers crossed Formula E can obviously make it a great event. Hopefully the racing will be amazing, and Formula E can use this to really move forward and actually, gain some fans and gain some traction and really, sort of try and embed itself as one of these leading motorsports in motorsport itself.
Yeah, and Jack, it's a pleasure to finally meet you, and we're looking forward to working with you next week. And for fans not familiar with Formula E, what makes Formula E so great?
It's just how unpredictable it is. If you're a traditional motorsport fan, all right, there isn't that much noise. There is noise. I've been there live, right? But it's not a normal V8 engine that you might hear from a back of a Chevrolet in the GTE class in IMSA, for example. You don't get that raw thrill. But it's so unpredictable. The cars are so close. There's 9 manufacturers. So maybe when you go to IndyCar, for example, you've got Honda and Chevrolet. When you go to IMSA, you might have the BMWs. I think Ford have pulled out now, and obviously Chevy or Ford are focusing on the IMSA category. I might be a bit incorrect on that. I'm sorry. But in Formula E, you've got the likes of Audi, Jaguar, Porsche, Mercedes. There's Mahindra, for example. There's some huge manufacturers in Formula E, and that's what makes it extremely special. And why it's so interesting, because, it is the future. Whether you like it or not, mobility will be electric. And this is what we're watching right now is the future. And that's exciting, seeing how the future is progressing, and the technology here in 10 years' time will be in all of our road cars, which is also quite exciting to think about.
Yeah, I actually remember when Formula E was announced several years ago. I believe I might have been in high school or whatever, but yeah, I remember watching the very first Formula E race. I believe it was the Beijing E-Prix when Nick Heidfeld went flying in the air in the final lap. That was definitely quite the start to the Formula E era, and as you mentioned, everything's going to be moving towards electric in the future, and whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. I think Formula E is definitely a racing series ahead of its time, and it's definitely a great series that's finally picking up traction, not just in Europe, but all over the world.
Definitely, you bring up about that first race in Beijing. I was watching it, of course, at the time I was in Alaska, so it was very convenient. It was prime time because of the time zones. And seeing Nick Heidfeld fly through the air on that final lap, final corner, that got my wife hooked on Formula E, and we've been huge into Formula E ever since then. Now, for everyone listening or watching us, we definitely highly recommend subscribing to Formula E Zone on YouTube and check out their website and their beautiful magazine. I know they just published the July edition. Great work over there. Now, Formula E, we're talking a little bit about that first initial race. It has really grown, but we've seen how it has really gotten a lot more competitive, especially with a lot of silly season news during this break. We've had Pascal Wehrlein leaving Mahindra, Daniel Abt losing his ride with Audi. Now he's going to Neo 333. And Sam Bird, he's going to Jaguar. And without a doubt, he was one of the biggest, if not probably the biggest, silly season news so far. Seeing how competitive Formula E has gotten in and how it's evolved to be one of the most competitive, for fans that are not too familiar, how did we get to this point? And is this just something that's going to continue for Formula E in the future with more manufacturers and the intensity of the competition?
I would think so. I think Formula E itself, like if we go back to season 1, season 2, like it was still competitive. You still had the likes of John-Eric Verne, Sebastian Buemi, like these were all Lucas de Grassi, ex-F1 drivers, Sam Bird, who just not quite made it, Nick Heidfeld, Bruno Senna. There was still people at the beginning that, it was still, people would have heard of those drivers. Now it's so much more cutthroat. And that's why we're seeing it with the silly season at the moment, with drivers moving left, right, and center, and teams trying to get the best driver lineups possible in order to make that step forward. A bit like with the Jaguar, like with Sam Bird partnering Mitch Evans for next season. Sam Bird has made that DS Virgin Racing, well, not DS anymore, sorry, has made the Envision Virgin Racing car, like that's his team. That's like Max Verstappen moving out of Red Bull to go to a different team. It's basically, I wouldn't say it's on the same level, but it's close enough. Basically, like it is a Max Verstappen team, and he's jumped out of that team, Sam Bird, to go to Jaguar, which is a Mitch Evans team. So that's a huge move, But yeah, I think it will get more competitive, especially as the manufacturers obviously keep rolling in, and obviously as the push towards electric vehicles and the closer and closer we get, it's going to rival Formula One for having some of the best drivers, in the world competing in it, and it probably already does.
Yeah, Jeff brought up some real excellent points there, and I remember, going back to the early days of Formula E, people used to say that Formula E was just a place for F1 rejects or the people who could not make it in Formula One. But over the years, Formula E has become it's become quite a well recognizable series all over the world and well respected as well by the FIA. And nowadays it seems like Formula E, that's definitely a great career option for drivers. Jean-Eric Vergne, we thought, when he was done in Formula One, we're like, we have no idea where he's gonna go. And then he went to Formula E and he won championships. And it's certainly a place where drivers can go and carve out a career now. And it's not considered a stain, to say that I was a Formula E driver. In the future, as Jack mentioned, Formula E will rival Formula One. I also believe that that's definitely a strong possibility of happening. And Formula E, I think its best days are ahead. And Jack has mentioned earlier, definitely excited to work with you in the Formula E Zone team next week, and having you all participate in a busy pick a winner Formula E Fest edition. And next we're going to pick a winner for race 1, and I'm gonna let you go first, Jack.
Oh my God, I can't believe you just done that. It could be anyone. It could be absolutely anyone, but I'm going to stick my neck on the line and go for, I think, Mitch Evans, who is currently P2 in the championship. Antonio Felix Acosta leads it. I'm going to go for Mitch Evans. I think that Jaguar is getting stronger and stronger and stronger as every race goes on. And obviously, it's like a massive season reset. Really and truly, it's like a new season. It's like a World Cup at this moment. But yeah, I'm going to go for Mitch Evans in the Jaguar. I think, he's been super quick, super consistent. So I'm going to go for him.
That's a great choice. I know that Jaguar is getting better and better. I remember the first time when Jaguar hit the track, they didn't seem 100%, but of course they were brand new. Now they're one of the car speed, but I think Antonio Felix Acosta, he's going to come out swinging, and I think he is going to get that first race win over in Berlin.
Yes, and now it's time for me. I think I'm going to go with the safe pick as well, just like Joe, with Antonio Felix Acosta. I think it's definitely his championship to lose at the moment. But however, with 6 races in 9 days, anything is possible.
Definitely anything is possible. I know we're super excited for next week. Jack, thank you again for being with us. Definitely, if you want to stick around, we'll be happy to talk a little bit about F1 with you. Now we got a little bit of some NASCAR racing to cover, and we're super excited because with NASCAR, one of the big things that makes it unique is we have a playoff system, of course, in the NASCAR Cup Series. And we're coming to a track that a lot of folks at the times will remember it for some of the more entertaining moments, especially since the last few years. The Magic Mile, New Hampshire International Speedway, has seen a lot more beating and banging, but it's still going to be coming down to between likely two competitors who are going to be very much the top favorites for the NASCAR Cup Series championship. Of course, we're talking about the guy coming in, driver to number 4, Ford, Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick comes in here. He is looking to make it 3 in a row. In fact, out of the last 5 races, he's won 3 of them at New Hampshire. But Kevin's only 8th when it comes to the best average finish among active drivers. Leading that is the person that just won last week, Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin has 5 wins this season, most out of any NASCAR driver. So he's definitely looking to make a win here, try to earn number 6. Kobe, when it comes to the race at New Hampshire, who do you believe has the upper hand between Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin?
I think it's definitely gonna be Denny Hamlin who has the upper hand. It seems like Denny is just on a roll, and Kevin Harvick's not far behind, and I definitely think that it's definitely going to be a dogfight between those two, and I also believe it was last year. I believe I had a bad sinus infection, and I was like in the bed for the entire month of July. But when they raced that loud and at the Magic Mile, it was an exciting finish between Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin, and I'd expect the same this time around.
Yeah, it's going to be something else. Now, one of the things, of course, Denny Hamlin, 5 wins this season. We have 11 different winners in the NASCAR Cup Series currently. Of course, if we get a 12th winner, that's going to make it really hard considering we only have 6 races left after this weekend in 4 different race weekends. We have 2 doubleheaders, Michigan and Dover, and then the 2 races are not doubleheaders. They're at Daytona, the Super Speedway, the restrictor plate. That's always a really unpredictable race. And then, of course, the road course, which nobody has gotten any track time on, and they won't have any track time till it's the time for the race. Is this going to be the toughest stretch in the schedule, especially for all the Cup Series drivers trying to get in the playoffs?
Certainly, it's definitely going to be one of the toughest stretches of the regular season. As you mentioned, got 2 doubleheaders at Michigan and Dover, and then two extreme wild card races. The Daytona road course, nobody has practice on that layout, but luckily Steve Myers of iRacing announced that they're going to scan the chicane they added, heading off Speedway 4 onto the front stretch into the trial with the new chicane. It's going to be scanned onto iRacing, so the drivers will be able to get some practice, and also the NASCAR iRacing series is going to be racing there as well. So I'm sure some of the drivers will be watching that event. And yeah, definitely, that's going to be their only way to get some practice. Although iRacing is never going to be the real thing, it's definitely a good tool to use. To get a good idea of what to expect. And I certainly think that iRacing is definitely going to put the drivers in the right mindset heading into Daytona road course, and it's certainly going to be an unpredictable race, especially if there's rain in the forecast. That you're planning to bring the rain tires, and it'll definitely be interesting to see the drivers on the oval section of the track in the wet, and the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona, the Super Speedway on the oval. That's definitely going to be a crazy race, as always is when NASCAR's racing on the Super Speedway. So definitely a lot of unpredictability coming up soon.
A lot of unpredictability. This just seems to become literally the toughest stretch. I mean, we have a doubleheader in Michigan. Plenty of opportunities to get a win. Doubleheader at the Monster Mile, Dover. That is a really tough track. It's going to be really hard for somebody that doesn't have a win to get a win. Of course, that's Jimmy Johnson's playground. That could be a good spot for him to return back to victory lane and get himself locked in the playoffs. Then Daytona is just so unpredictable with the road course. Nobody knows what's going to happen, especially if we get rain. And then the Super Speedway, It's just almost crazy, unpredictable. It's going to be crazy. This is going to be really tough for drivers without a win. And we will have more NASCAR coverage coming up later in the program. We're now switching gears to Formula One and the British Grand Prix and the surprising return of Nico Hülkenberg, but not exactly for the best circumstances.
Yeah, definitely not the best circumstances for the Hulk's return. But on Thursday, it was reported that Racing Point Formula One driver Sergio Perez's test came out with an inconclusive test result. Inconclusive does not mean that the driver has tested positive for the virus, but is treated as potentially positive. So Sergio had to take the test again, and the second test did come back positive. And Perez was isolated away from the Racing Point team and the protocol of tracing people in contact and isolating team members he had been in contact with. And Sergio Perez did make the trip back to his native country of Mexico before the race weekend, and Racing Point clearly said that he did nothing wrong with his trip. And Sergio Perez is the first Formula One driver to test positive for the virus that is creating a lot of chaos all around the globe. And we do wish Sergio Perez a speedy recovery. I hope that he returns to the track soon. And of course, many are speculating what will happen next year with Sebastian Vettel, rumored to take his seat at Racing Point, which will be rebranded as Aston Martin Racing F1 team next year. So how big of a setback is this for Sergio Perez's championship hopes and potentially next season as well?
I don't know if it's a massive setback for his championship hopes, because I don't think he's a championship contender, to be honest with you. I think it's very obvious from today, from qualifying, that the Mercedes are just, in a completely different league. For him next season, who knows? He says he has a contract for Racing Point next season. But in Formula One, anything can change. I think if they are going to go with Vettel and Lance Stroll, then the writing's already on the wall. Perez could probably win 4 races this season, and they probably still drop him if they really want Sebastian Vettel to be in the car next season.
You bring up a really good point, especially next season. It seems like if they really want Vettel, they're going to try to go all in with Vettel. Lance Stroll is going to be really interesting to see. He's most likely going to be there next year. But yeah, definitely I will have to agree with you, especially after today, what we saw in qualifying. The Racing Point, they weren't really there. We still saw Red Bull up there, but still it's going to be all Mercedes for the rest of the season, it looks like.
Yeah, you guys definitely brought up some great points. I also agree. I don't think Sergio Perez is a championship contender for obvious reasons. And yeah, but the Racing Point definitely looks strong. And if something crazy happens with the Mercedes or whatever, the Red Bulls, the Verstappen, then maybe Racing Point might be able to sneak out a surprise win this year. We just have to wait and see what happens. And also, with Sergio Perez out, Nico Hülkenberg has made a shock return to the F1 grid, and now Racing Point has a really interesting scenario this weekend. And next, unlike the traditional driver situation where they clearly define driver number 1 and 2 or two teammates battling each other for the number 1 status, you have one driver returning back trying to prove that he belongs in F1 and should have never left the grid, and another one trying to prove that he is worthy of his spot on the grid because of his talent, not because his dad is at the head of the Formula One team. Yeah, but who has more pressure on them this weekend, Nico Hülkenberg or Lance Stroll?
Lance Stroll, 100%. 100% Lance Stroll. Nico Hülkenberg, all he has to do is do well and be within a couple of attempts. This guy, you have to remember, he hasn't tested that car. This is the first time he stepped into it. Like, what he's done so far, yes, he didn't make it into Q3 in qualifying today, but, he was within a couple of attempts of Lance Stroll in qualifying anyway and just missed out by less than a tenth of a second. So, and we know that Racing Point cars have got a good, has got a good race pace, basically. So maybe Nico Hülkenberg can actually score points. A lot of people are wanting that fairy tale story of him to score podium. It's very unlikely. Whether he'll do it this weekend, I doubt it. But give himself this race weekend. If Sergio Perez has to miss next weekend's British Grand Prix, then, who's to say not that he can't? And Formula One can be crazy. And it would be an absolute dream, I think. And a fairy tale story if he was to get it. But I don't think he's going to get it on merit. I think stuff's going to have to happen for him to end up in that position. But he's in a car that's more than capable of doing it.
I have to agree. The pressure's on Lance Stroll. He really wants to go out and show that he is worthy of F1. The big thing with Nico, as you pointed out, yesterday he got in the car and he had to step out because of a pressure point that was making his ride uncomfortable. It really shows how these cars are really tailored for each specific driver. And just to get a quick setup from Sergio to Nico was a huge challenge for the team. And of course, the team had some members isolated as well because of the situation with Perez. So definitely the pressure's on Stroll. I definitely see Hülkenberg. He wants to go out there and make a point that he belongs there. And if he's possibly back the following weekend for the second race of the British Grand Prix, I think he's really going to try to do everything he can and maybe try to go for that fairy tale ending of a podium by the second race.
And speaking about pressure, the first day of practice saw Red Bull and Racing Point at the top of the practice charts, but Friday was incredibly hot, hotter than what's expected for the rest of the race weekend. Do you think Lewis Hamilton is expected to win, or can we anticipate someone really taking the fight to Mercedes this weekend?
I think from qualifying you can't. A second clear, 1 second clear of Max Verstappen. Like, not Verstappen just overperforming that Red Bull and getting it within a couple of attempts. 1 full second. So it's Bottas. That's your only hope. If someone of actually stopping Lewis Hamilton today or tomorrow is Valtteri Bottas. It's a fight for that final podium. The battle for the points is going to be epic with McLaren, Racing Point, Renault, Red Bull, and Albon obviously trying to come back through the field from his poor qualifying. So I think that's where your race is tomorrow. Out front, you ain't going to see a Mercedes car.
Yeah, that's what it seems to look like. It might be just a Mercedes show, especially Lewis Hamilton. 1 full second, that 1 minute, 24 seconds. That was just amazing lap. It was like, oh my gosh. Unless something crazy happens, like what we see on the first race at Austria, where there was a little bit of a reliability issue. That's the only way I could see anybody having any shot against Mercedes.
Yeah, the only way I see Mercedes losing is something really crazy happening, like both cars, a double retirement from the race. But otherwise, I think this is gonna be a cakewalk for Lewis Hamilton, or Lewis Hamilton slips up. Valtteri Bottas will be there to capitalize on his mistakes. And in the last 6 races, Lewis Hamilton has won here at Silverstone, and the only driver besides him to win was in 2018 with Sebastian Vettel, and Ferrari is still in the battle for the best of the rest with McLaren and Renault. But who has the upper hand this weekend, since Silverstone has a lot of high-speed corners?
I think Ferrari are doing are much better. They've obviously done, the pace was there. Leclerc did a good lap. Ferrari will be there. Racing Point potentially. I think it's too close to call, to be honest with you, Kobe. I think it's way too close to call who will have the upper hand. McLaren, Norris in an absolute brilliant lap. So as I said, I think that's where the race is tomorrow. The race is who can get there. If I was to put my money on it, I'm going to go Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. But I think it's really too close to call.
It seems like it's going to be pretty close to call. It's going to be one of those things where at the end, Ferrari, what we saw from Leclerc, that looked great. Vettel, we know how in the past poor qualifying could come up. So it's going to be really close. And I think at the end, when it comes to, especially there are the high-speed corners there. We saw Leclerc do what he could do. But at the end, it's going to be really close between and I think especially once we saw what McLaren did, I think they're going to be up there too. If Lando Norris has another good, uneventful race, no issues, I think he's going to be up there. And if one of the top 3 has bad luck, he could be in the podium.
And one track not known for fast corners is the Magic Mile in New Hampshire. Now it's time for a little game called NASCAR In or Out, starting with Clint Boyer. So Boyer has earned his first career win right here at New Hampshire, driving for Richard Childress Racing. He enters 42 points ahead of the cut line. Joe, is he in or out of the top 16 after the race?
I think he'll be in. He got his first win here. He needs to put together good finishes. He seems to be doing that. Every once in a while, a poor finish. But I think he'll be in, especially for fans not familiar with NASCAR. 60 points, the maximum you could earn in a race. So 42 ahead, he needs to have essentially a DNF or just really bad luck. Now, Matt DiBenedetto, he is 35 above the cut line. Last weekend, he got DNF. That set him back. with 60 points max per race, there's still a chance that somebody could go ahead and beat him and get into the top 16. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And of course, if somebody wins, a 12th different winner, he will be on the bubble. Kobe, after today, is back to Bando in or out of the top 16.
Oh, I definitely think Matty D is going to stay in the top 16. I mean, last week at Kansas, it was just one of those bad races, and he's definitely running really well this season with the Wood brothers. Definitely outperforming what Paul Menard did with that team. I definitely think that Matt DiBenedetto is going to stay in the top 16 after the race at Loudon. And next, William Byron is only 10 points in the playoff picture right now. Behind him is Tyler Reddick, a rookie looking to join his teammate in the playoffs. And William Byron's big goal is to earn stage points, which he has this season, but not allow Tyler Reddick ahead of him by more than 10 positions. Is William Byron in or out?
I think William Byron is going to fall out. The hard part for him is the consistency. Last week, we saw him do well. He always seems to do good when it comes to scoring stage points. It's that finishing position he seems to really lack. So I don't think, especially the Magic Mile, I don't see him excelling at that track, and I think he'll probably fall out. Tyler Reddick is 10 points behind William Byron, as you mentioned. So if he finished 10 positions ahead of Byron, he essentially bypassed it and could be in. If he does that, or at least win one of the stages and earn those 10 stage points, big goal, finish 10 spots ahead of 24, and finish at least 2 spots ahead of Eric Jones. Do you see Tyler Reddick in or out of the playoffs after the race?
Oh, I think Tyler Reddick's going to be out, but it's going to be really close. I think he's going to cut it down to maybe less than 5-point difference between him and the final spot in the playoffs. But I definitely see Tyler Reddick getting in the playoffs moving forward. And Eric Jones is only 2 spots behind Tyler Reddick, 10 behind William Byron last weekend. Had a good finish. But he needs to improve his consistency. Is Eric Jones in or out?
I definitely see Eric Jones being in, and I think he could definitely be in the top 10, possibly the top 5 by the end of this race. I see him moving in. He could surpass Tyler Reddick. William Byron has a poor race. He'll be in position to be in the playoffs. Now, Jimmy Johnson, 18 points out of the playoffs. He essentially needs to win stage points, and the others have bad luck to try to get in the top 16 by the end of this race. After Sunday, do you see Jimmy Johnson being the top 16, or is he out of the top 16?
Oh, he's definitely going to be out at this point. I think the 48 team, they've had so much bad luck. I think it's going to be important for them, to try to roll the dice and win a race. And luckily, the Dover doubleheader. Yeah, that's a crazy tongue twister. The Dover doubleheader is coming up, and Dover's been one of his best tracks. And maybe the 48 can get their mojo back there. And also, Michigan doubleheader as well. And then you have 2 wildcard races, Daytona road course. Jimmy Johnson does have experience on that circuit, minus the chicane. He's run the Rolex 24 before with the number 99 Red Dragon Team Gamesco, which is unfortunately no longer around. And then, Daytona, anybody can win there if you just stay out of trouble and be in the right place at the right time. So I definitely think that Jimmy Johnson will have several opportunities to secure a win. But however, it's definitely going to be an uphill battle. And maybe the 48 team will be able to, find some good luck or something, because right now everything is just trending in the wrong direction for that team.
Yeah, it seems like everything has been going wrong for the 48 team. Of course, he just finished his IndyCar test on Tuesday, so hopefully he has some positive momentum from that to keep going and contend for the championship and try to get in the playoffs. That's the big picture. Now, one driver that is in a real comfortable position right now has to be Aric Almirola, Mr. Top 10 finisher, essentially. He has a streak of top 10 finishes. He is well above the bubble for the top 16. Now, if you're the crew chief of Aric Almirola, what do you set up the car for? Are you going to try to set up the car and a strategy to go for the win and try to secure yourself in the playoffs? Or are you going to still just sort of go at the pace of, let's just try to stay in the top 10 and secure our spot in the playoffs through finishing the top 10 and points?
I think they can afford to do both. Honestly, I mean, right now, Eric Amarilla, is one of the most consistent drivers in NASCAR lately. His streak of top tens has been really crazy, and he's definitely been performing really well. And they can make it in on points without scoring a win. So if they just keep up the consistency, keep clicking off top tens, top fives, whatever, I think that they'll be perfectly fine. But I'm sure I'm gonna beat this into a lot of people's skulls. A win will take away a lot of sleepless nights as we get closer to the playoffs. If you win and pass post race inspection, then you don't have anything else to worry about. You can just focus on getting your cars prepared for the 10-week grind to the championship.
Definitely, we got a big 10-week grind for the championship, and of course, a win today is great because after Sunday's race, we only have Michigan, the Dover double headers that you talked about, and then of course Daytona and the Daytona Road Course. That is the biggest wild card, and of course we still have the Super Speedway there. Two big wild cards. Count the Monster Mile in. That's a really unforgiving track. It's going to be really intense for everyone. Now, one thing that's going to be really intense, of course, yesterday it was announced about the new chicane and the change in the aero package. And they're still not going to have the Cup Series drivers do any practice or qualifications for this new track. You mentioned about sim racing, iRacing. They're going to have the new chicane added there. Kobe, why did NASCAR change the course and the aero package for the Daytona Road Course? And it's no track time till the green flag for the race. Is that asking too much for the drivers?
Yeah, I don't understand the decision, not to have any track time. Even the NASCAR Xfinity Series, that they didn't even go to the Indianapolis road course before, but they still gave them practice time. And I have no idea why we can't at least do a 30-minute or even a 15-minute shakedown session, so the drivers can get familiar with the track, since this is a new track. So I think, asking them, to I think they're going to be all right there because all of these drivers are professionals and all. But I definitely think track time would have helped. And you did mention, changes with the chicane. The reason why they added the chicane is due to speed, the high speeds and safety. Like based on the sim, the Cup cars would have been going, well over 200 miles per hour going through the travel and down into the heavy braking zone of turn one. And, they would be going like IMSA DPI type speeds, but with the DPI cars, the braking is a lot different. Those cars have, a crap load of downforce, and the Cup cars, it takes them a lot longer to stop. I've seen people, describe the Cup cars, they take them longer to stop. They slide. So, the Cup cars will be sliding to a stop, while, with the DPI, you just smack the brakes, and it's going to stop immediately. And, definitely a safety concern, especially, with the high speeds and all. If NASCAR did not add the chicane, going through Speedway 3 and 4 heading into the Tribal, the drafting would have been really crazy at those high speeds. And, there would be potential for a major accident at those speeds, in the low downforce, it would definitely increase the chances of a car going airborne or potentially flying into the fence. And, NASCAR definitely doesn't want anyone to get hurt. So with the addition of the chicane, it's an effort to slow down those top speeds of 200 miles per hour. I'm not really sure what the top speed is going to be now heading down into turn one into the infield section, but it's definitely going to be a lot safer for all of the drivers involved. And with the aero package, 750 horsepower and instead of low downforce is going to be it's going to be a high downforce factor, so similar to what they ran on the road courses last year that really didn't produce a lot of passing on the road courses. But I'm hopeful, since this is a high speed circuit at Daytona, I'm really hopeful, that it won't play a factor. I feel like that we could have, with the addition of the chicane, we could have at least kept a low downforce to help with passing. But yeah, and I'm afraid we're going to see what we saw last year on the road courses, where it's going to be hard to pass, and and then the on track product is going to be ruined. But for now, we don't really know what to expect, so we're just gonna have to wait until it's time for the green flag on race day.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting once we get to race day, the green flag that'll come out. Taking a look at the top 10 stars for the NASCAR race. We have Eric Amarilla. He drew the pole. Of course, again, drawing for the pole position. Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, and Kyle Busch ran out the top 5. Clint Boyer, Kevin Harvick, Alex Bowman, Joey Logano, and Kurt Busch round your top 10. So it's going to be really interesting to see how everyone does with the upcoming race at New Hampshire Motor Speedway.
And next, we're going to take a look at the top 10 starters for the Formula One British Grand Prix. Surprise, surprise, we have a Mercedes lockout in the front row with hometown boy Lewis Hamilton on pole and Valtteri Bottas second. Then we have Max Verstappen in the Red Bull third, Charles Leclerc Ferrari fourth, Lando Norris rounding out the top 5 in the McLaren. Then we have Lance Stroll, a Racing Point, who we mentioned, who needs to perform this weekend, starting 6th, Carlos Sainz 7th, Daniel Ricciardo 8th. We have Esteban Ocon 9th, and Sebastian Vettel rounds out the top 10. And with warmer temperatures expected for the Grand Prix, do you think the softer tire compound will be an advantage over the harder tires?
With warmer temperatures, you normally need to go for a harder compound of tire because they won't blister. So I would assume the soft tire will be quick and will warm up and get into the operating window. They might overheat. But they might grain faster. That's the whole point. We had temperatures, I think 25 degrees. I think that's what we're expecting tomorrow, but nowhere near. We had 34 degrees air temperature, which is like for the United Kingdom, that is like rare. So I would assume it's going to be a one-stop race. I think Pirelli have taken the hardest compounds of tires to the tracks. Therefore, I think it'll be a one-stop race, soft to medium. Or soft to hard, and then one-stop race. And then hopefully next week we might see a bit more on strategy because the tires will be a step softer. So what is the medium today? The yellow stripe tire will be the red tire next weekend, I believe. No, forgive me, that's wrong. Will be the hard tire. So the red tire, then the yellow tire will become the red tire or whatever it is, and then there'll be a step softer. So whatever I'm talking about right now, basically the tires next weekend will be softer than they are this weekend, so therefore the temperature will have a much bigger difference, and we might expect a 2-stop strategy race instead of a 1.
I have a really good point about this change in tires for the following weekend. It is something where, of course, with that move, is going to try to generate a little bit more of a different race, and especially if the weather continues to be about the same trend around the same temperature. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen. And I'll definitely have to agree with you that this seems the medium tires will be an advantage. Today we did see cooler than yesterday's weather. Again, we got Lando Norris, I believe, is starting on soft tires tomorrow. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he does and how everything turns out in tomorrow's race.
Yeah, and we saw a distinctive difference between the Austrian Grand Prix 1 and 2. In the first Grand Prix, we saw, it was a very unpredictable race and saw podium with Valtteri Bottas, Charles Leclerc, and Lando Norris in the McLaren. In the second race, in typical fashion, both Mercedes and Max Verstappen with Red Bull. Will we see a repeat of 2 very different races or similar outcomes in each British Grand Prix?
That's the beauty of live sport, isn't it? We have absolutely no idea. I think we would be expecting to see a Mercedes front, I don't, unless, some reliability hits them or, some drama into turn 1, which we've seen before at Silverstone. Remember Lewis Hamilton dropping all the way to the back and then fought his way up to finish in second. I think in the year that Sebastian Vettel won in 2018. So, drama can happen at the start. But if Mercedes get through the start phase pretty cleanly, it's theirs to lose. So I think the start will be very interesting to see whether or not. But the midfield battle, that battle for points, that could be a completely different race this week to what it is next week. So that, as I said, is the most exciting thing at the moment in Formula One.
Yeah, that midfield with McLaren, Racing Point, Renault is up there, and Ferrari being in that battle. That's going to be really the battle. Unless something happens in the start where Mercedes doesn't get a good start, Max Verstappen gets a stellar start and just pulls into the lead, and then we have a close race. And, of course, some contact. I think that could be the big thing. One of the big things occurred was Austria. That first race was the first race of the year, which always seems to be a little bit more of a crazier race. So it could be a little bit where we might see a little bit of the same outcome where it'll be Mercedes, Max battling. It'll come down to the start. Strategy might play a factor, especially in the second race, but definitely I think the big battle will be, as mentioned, in the midfield.
And now looking at the grid ranking, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas are the top 2 Formula One racers in the standing, and Kevin Harvick, the top NASCAR driver, with Denny Hamlin and 8. Out of those 4 drivers, who is likely to gain the most points this weekend?
I don't know. Lewis Hamilton. I'm gonna go. I don't know if it's. I don't think IndyCar's racing this race, so I'm gonna go with Lewis Hamilton because I think he'll win it.
I would have to go with you too, Lewis Hamilton, unless something goes wrong with that Mercedes failure, or we get a repeat of Spain and the 2 Mercedes somehow take each other out. Lewis Hamilton, he is the top of the class, whereas in NASCAR, Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, they still got 20-plus good drivers. Such a long race. NASCAR races are almost too unpredictable. So I do see where if I was a betting guy, I would go with Lewis Hamilton.
And now it's time for Pick a Winner. And we encourage you all to tell us in the chat who you think will win the Formula One British Grand Prix. And we'll start with Joe picking first. Joe, who do you think is going to win at Silverstone?
Silverstone? I know Lewis Hamilton could be the safe bet, but I want to go with something different. I'm going to go with Valtteri Bottas. I know, it's a teammate, not exactly a big shocker, but I do see he's going to really try to make the case that I want a shot at this championship, and I do see him trying to go for the championship and try to get the win.
I want to go Bottas. I so want to go, and you might think I'm British and therefore support a British driver, but it's really not the case. I really want to go Bottas, obviously, to make the championship interesting. But if I have to pick a winner, I'm sorry, it's gonna be Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, sticking with Jack there, definitely think Lewis Hamilton is gonna take his home Grand Prix once again.
It's gonna be interesting to see if what's going to happen. We got 2 Lewis, 1 for Valtteri, and of course for everyone watching, you can participate in Pick Winner with the hashtag Pick a Winner. Of course, as y'all see, Kobe has a dominant lead, 8 over me, Seth, Matt, and Care Bear. These are all Twitter followers, so we encourage everyone to participate on the grid ranking. Now we're going to go into the NASCAR Pick a Winner. Of course, the Foxwood 301 at New Hampshire. Since I know I went first for the Formula One race, Kobe, who do you think is going to win the NASCAR race?
I think Denny Hamlin is going to win number 6 of the season.
Denny Hamlin seems like a good guess. I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. I think he's finally going to go ahead and break through and earn the win for the season. So it's going to be a really interesting race. I know, Jack, you're not totally familiar with NASCAR. Would you care to make any prediction of who you think would win?
I can't. I honestly, I can't. Kyle Busch, okay, that's a driver I know that races in NASCAR. But no, I'm sorry. Juan Pablo Montoya was there once upon a time. I know he's not there now. But yeah, I'm sorry. My NASCAR knowledge is not great. I don't mind watching it, but I have no idea who's actually participating. I'll go for Bubba Wallace. There you go. No idea why. He's just been in the news lately, obviously for reasons. But I'll go for him.
Wow. So Bubba Wallace, Kyle Busch. I mean, and then going Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace gets that win. We're definitely going to be, you called it. That's going to be really amazing. We encourage everyone to be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, especially since next week we're going to have special week coverage of Formula E Fest. And be sure to follow and use the hashtag Formula E Fest. We're super excited to be working with Formula E Zone, Jack and everyone there. And then, of course, we're going to be releasing a Pick a Winner fun worksheet. So with this fun worksheet, people could download. You'll have all the drivers there. Just pick a winner, second place and third place for each race. It's going to be really exciting. We definitely want to see people share it using the hashtag Formula E Fest. And then, of course, 9 races, 6